Okay, good afternoon. I am Enzo Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon to try and figure out the future for smarter buildings. It's great to have you with us today. In case you're wondering who we are, our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org. Also just to point out that views expressed here in this hour are personal, not of any company or organization. And let's make this as interactive as we can on the Zoom chat. It's always great when we get a lot of interaction with the audience. So looking forward to that. And if you need anything that's on this slide deck, it's available on mondaylive.org. So we are starting a new month today. It being the 3rd of November. And we're going to start a new theme for the month of November. And the theme is, as you see it there, composing digital twins for real ROI. Bit of a mouthful, but we thought in our planning call last week that this will be a good way to continue the discussion that we've had in this last month about specifying information. This seems to be fit in very nicely. So looking forward to this. In terms of the agenda today and normal news and trends chit chat. And then on the composing digital twin, we're sort of going to focus on what we are composing this week. And we'll obviously move into sort of other aspects of this conversation next week and the following. And also Doug, who's probably the most experienced digital twin guy in the team here, is not necessarily available because he's traveling. He may be on and off, and he would be much better if we can be involved in the digital twin part of the conversation. So that's the agenda, but as always, I'm going to hand it over to Ken Sinclair for an update from Automated Buildings.
Thank you very much, Anto. Lots going on as always. And here we go up in the top left-hand corner, the IBB project, interoperability building blocks. It talks about how that is going to help bring all the twins together. And I think if there's anything that we learned in the last month, October, is that there's not going to be just one twin, there's going to be multiple twins. And the simpler we can make the twins, probably the more powerful they will be. And then what we're seeing here is that already a plan to start to bring the twins together and to control them and act as the orchestrator. Ever what that
orchestrator.
Orchestrator. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. And yeah, so that's interesting. Who is specifying for who is our last week's session. We basically we forgot to record it, but we basically were able to pull some of it out of the notes that were being taken by the various methods. So there's a recovery of it and what happened there. We have an article on our site, What is Metadata? And it's good. It talks a little bit about why we need more information. It's not just about having the points and having points named. They have to have more information, more data about the data. Just moving along that same line, this one caught my attention is as we're talking about twins and talking about Arete and talking about all of this wonderful stuff. You can see the look on Boiler Room Bob's eyes there. He's just, he used to say it was the controls fault, and now he's probably not even sure. It's AI's fault, it's the twin's fault. I think the twin will become the person, but interesting. So that leads off to one of Phil Zito's things, that how training is important. And I think just what needs to be included in the training is some of the thoughts that are starting to evolve rapidly around AI and digital twins and individual twins, particular twins, small databases, small learning learning modules, what do we call those things? Anyway, the language models, sorry, the small language models that are developing and AI agents. So all of that stuff, I don't know that they have to understand the gory details of it, but at least conceptually understand that how the world is shifting. Going down on the, still on the left side at the left-hand bottom corner there is an article from Kimon, and I think it's a great article. I've read through it pretty close, and I think it does a great job of summarizing what we've done as Monday Live and C4SB over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's well worth a read. And it's actually, we're starting to see in with the PAE living building, we're starting to see some application of it and starting to see some testing of some of our theories. And the next one to it is C4SB. Again, some work that Kimon had done, and some dialogue and links to some actual videos of what's going on. Moving just right across then to the right-hand side, the smart building thing is over. We were media sponsor of that. Below that, we've got data assurance commissioning. And I'm not sure that I'd really thought about that, how the data needs to be commissioned, probably more important than anything else we're commissioning. Is this data real? Does it, does it actually reflect what is happening in the space? Is it connected to anything? Or naturally, they're checking to see if the sensors are returning the right temperature. But is it the right sensor? Has it got the right metadata? A whole bunch of intricacies there that are going to fall on the commissioning industry, which I hadn't really thought much about that, but that'd be an interesting thing to have a discussion on sometime, how that might go. Below that is our program for AHR. I'm still liking our title, Navigating Complexity and Escalating Opportunity. I kind of believe that's what we're all doing in the industry, and I certainly think that's the goal of automated buildings, to try and make that all happen. And last but not least, down at the bottom corner there is the event in Atlanta, which is next week. It's always great to go and see what the cloud native people are doing. I believe we can learn much from them. We can learn how they have accomplished some of the amazing things they have done, and still kept it all open. So I applaud anybody that's going to that. If anybody's going to that, if they could share their take on it with us, that would be great. We'd really appreciate that. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. Lots of interesting things going on, as always. Speaking of cloud native and Linux, I came across this over the weekend. It's a report that the Linux Foundation does annually, the state of open source. And so here it is. It's very interesting. It's not that long, but it's definitely worth a skim. So here's the link, and once we get going, I'll put that link in chat as well. But it's on the slide deck here. But it talks about really, again, the importance of open source. Here, there's this full quote that I sort of focused on, is that they're sort of talking about open source as a strategic thing, and that when resourced and invested in with experts, without that, it's really difficult to make progress in the world today. It's kind of their philosophy. But I think you'll find that interesting. And with that, it's probably a good segue for Rick. Over to you, Rick.
Well, it is the perfect segue in that over the past few weeks, we've talked about how we're getting our different working groups up to now. We've got 15 of them, and how a lot of them are showing off their work in the context of this PAE building, which is Kimon's mentioned it, Ken just mentioned it. a lot of the different work, whether it's digital twins or cybersecurity or whatever, is being demonstrated in the context of a real building. And last week, there was a presentation where some reps from the building owner and engineering firm that is there, spoke. And I realized that one of the key things that when we're talking about all the different work and all the different things that are happening at the PAE building, the really big difference, it's not that there's going to be cybersecurity. That's not the story. It's not that there's going to be a digital twin. That's not the story. It's not that there's going to be certain, data visualization or any of the other fault detection and diagnostic. That's not the story. The story is that it's being done with open source and open standards orientation. And so your state of the Linux impact on, the world economy and the state of open source in general, that's the story. So I wanted to just dwell on that for a moment, because as we go into AHR, which is a big focus of what we're doing now, as we're working up the different storytelling of what's happening with PAE and what's happening with the different working groups, the central core of it is that all this work is being done and demonstrated with open source and open systems at its core. And that's the story. And so the point that was made on the previous slide about if you're not participating in doing your technology this way, you are falling behind. You may not realize it, but you're falling behind. You're falling behind in the race for talent. You're falling behind in the race to impress customers. You're falling behind in a lot of different ways. You're falling behind in the speed to market. And so what we want to be able to demonstrate isn't that, oh, now you can do fault detection. Well, that's been possible for 15 or 30 years, according to Jim Lee, and it's true. A lot of these capabilities have been possible in the past, but doing it in this new, more open systems ecosystem of more data and more systems being available to, again, in this case, fault detection or digital twin, being able to do it in ways where open source is the key. That's the story we want to highlight. So good timing. That was the that was my blurb.
Do you have any updates on C4SB that you want to bring up?
Do you have a question? Is there something specifically you want me to update?
No. Come on.
Yeah, just to work off what Rick said about the story for C4SB. On the surface, if you look at this work that's being done and you just look at the images and the outputs, it looks similar to what was done before, but it's a tectonic shift because of the open source connectivity. It's almost like looking at AOL and thinking it's the internet, and then the internet explodes after that. So you have dashboards in the old world and you have dashboards in this new world, but it's much different because of the open connectivity and the opportunity that it has on the slide that you showed, Anto. If we're not part of that, then you're going to stay in the AOL world, and that obviously didn't last too long, or it did, but it disappeared pretty quickly.
And who still has an AOL account, email account?
I know somebody that does, so be careful. But it's more like and it's not me. But remember Lotus Notes? That's even better example of a walled garden or proprietary approach to bringing everything together.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay, then let's move on. Anything else from anyone? Bring up?
Well, one quick news thing. USGBC is this week in Los Angeles, and I am going to be presenting the PAE building as part of the AI and cities presentation, from the perspective that if you want to use AI and scale it to a city level, you're not going to do it in proprietary systems. They have to talk to each other. And the PAE building is the beginning of that. That's kind of the angle that I have.
That's great.
On Wednesday.
It's cool. It's not online, is it? It's not available.
I have a draft that I'll be distributing, but the public version is coming out on Wednesday.
Okay, hopefully we'll get a recording of it after. It's great. Good luck with that. Okay, let us move on then and talk about composing digital twins. So the focus, as I mentioned at the top, is that we want to sort of focus on what is it that we're composing and what is this composing all about anyway. We've been hearing about digital twin as being the answer to everything, and this is kind of a slightly different twist of how to think about digital twin, as I think Ken mentioned that at the beginning. So last week and the whole of last month, we were talking about specification, and we brought this up several times over the month, the master format, which actually identifies all of the different things that happen in buildings over time. And this is the way you specify the building, the way you procure it. So one of the first questions is that when we're talking about composing, as we were trying to do last week, are these the sort of things that we're composing? That's a possible way of thinking about it, what the digital twin is actually thinking about conveying equipment or electrical or whatever, and figure out if there's any purpose of composing those two things to do something useful. So that's kind of one possible way of thinking about it. Over the past 2 or 3 years, we at Monday Live and C4SB, we've been talking a lot about silos, and the fact that assets like buildings are made up of silos. And the challenge we have ahead of us is actually how to make all of those silos work together. So I would think that that's another way of thinking about how these silos are being twinned using these sort of vertical lines, and how these blue lines are effectively composing elements of those silos into something else, into some useful thing for the users who need to operate that building. So this is another way of thinking about what is actually being composed. And this is an interesting piece of work that came out of the Digital Twin Consortium. I spent a couple of years working in the DTC, wrote a couple of papers, and while I was there, and Doug Migliori is still very active at the Digital Twin. And they've come up with this Digital Twin capability table, which is really sort of interesting, because what they've done is they've said, okay, there are different types of capability. There are lots of capabilities, but you can think about them as different types of capabilities. So the first one that I list here is the data services. All of these items on all of these boxes on the left are all data services stuff, capabilities like contextualizing data and AI model repository kind of stuff. So they're very, very specific. So these are that data services, and then there's integration stuff, which is all the sort of the salmon color thing. API services you see there. And then you have intelligence, which is kind of obviously what you're trying to extract out of it. The composition is part of that. Artificial intelligence is part of that. And then you have the UX side of things, which is again different. It's the UX rather than the core intelligence. And basic visualization and dashboards are all there. And 3D rendering, Kimon, you and I talk a lot about Hollywood BIM and Hollywood Digital Twin. That's what that is. The capability to make it a 3D rendering. And if you don't want it, then you shouldn't have it. That's kind of the whole idea of this, is that this will allow practitioners of when they're thinking about digital twin to be very focused on the capabilities that they're actually trying to enact in an asset, in a building. So which are the pieces that they need. So that's that, and then there's a number of boxes to do with management, and a whole bunch of things to do with trustworthiness. Right? So another way of splitting all of the information that relates to the buildings, from master format to the silos, and this is another way. And the other way that I thought would be useful is just across the building's life cycle. This is just an image that I found about the building life cycle. Obviously, different things happen in different parts of the multi-decade life cycle of a building. So those could be things that needs to be composed. So there's a lot. There's a lot. And after I got done finishing these slides, I didn't really know where to end the slide. So I basically say, where do we start? There's a lot here. So propose that this is kind of what we should be discussing here today. So anybody want to chime in on this sort of framing about how we start to think about composing stuff?
Maybe to relate back to what was said earlier about the need for metadata and your reference to the 3D model, Anto, I think depending on the context, you need different parts of that periodic table, depending on the use case, right? And sometimes you need 3D, sometimes you don't need 3D, but you need other things. So for example, in the semantic modeling that we're doing with RDF and the systems in a building, there are relationships which essentially are metadata between things. It's not really 3D, but it's a very important model. And then if you want to know the context, then you're related to the 3D. So I think there's quite a bit of confusion in the industry about what a digital twin is. And I know there's, in fact, I looked back at the paper that you and Doug wrote years ago. I reread it again. I think it's still a great paper, the one from 2021 that kind of lays the stage of systems and everything. Anyway, that's my context. And I think keeping it simple or keeping it specific to the use case, because the tendency is to pile on more and more and more, because it's really cool when you have so much stuff on it, but then you can't maintain it or use it. So then there's kind of this usability angle to it. What is the use case driven need for that particular connectivity between these different parts of the capabilities?
I just saw Mark Goldman's comment on chat, which is very valid. I agree with you. But we kind of needed to start somewhere. And you know, obviously, one of the things about these sort of 4 slides that I sort of put together is that they're from different perspectives, right? So you know, you can think about how to compose from multiple different ways, which in a way doesn't make it easy if you look at this. But I think if you start to, and this is I think your point, Kimon, if you start from a use case, then it really should become a lot easier. Rick?
Well, I'm going to agree with Mark. I don't think there's confusion amongst owners as to what a digital twin or some sort of tool, some sort of digital tooling. There really isn't the confusion that we like to try and say there is. Sure, if you put it in the context of a use case or you show an example, that that's helpful. But in my years of experience since you know, gosh, coming out of college and focusing on managerial decision models, that was actually my official major, I believe. So whether it was modeling or simulation or emulation or any of these things, I don't think anybody really is confused about what that can do for whatever the domain is. Digital twin happens to be kind of a new, quite easy to understand. It's a twin that's digital rather than written, you know, on paper or whatever. I just don't think there's as much confusion. What there might be is just where do I buy it? And you guys have heard me say that before. It's like, what pieces are going to be included in it, and what is it going to cost me? But this composability approach of saying, well, do you want this capability or that capability? You want this component or that component? I think that'll be helpful for composing the different kinds of twins that can help answer different kinds of questions. But I just from my experience in talking with owners, I've never had anybody be confused about the term.
I agree. I mean, it's just, I mean, if you're confused, you're probably not providing a digital twin anyway. You probably don't even have the capability to do it. So, I mean, yeah, it's like kind of like this, like some external person other than the digital twin provider has to provide context and meaning and understanding to the data To me, it's just ridiculous. Like yeah, you probably can't do a digital twin anyway if you don't understand what you're doing.
Mhm.
Tracy, thoughts on this?
I don't know that I have anything new to contribute.
My quick comment on the confusion is it's the marketing sometimes is confused. The pitch of I have the digital twin or this is the digital twin or things like that. But yes, the people that actually know what they're building and delivering, and if they're asking it the right way, actually, Rick, I would disagree with you. Many owners do not know what a digital twin is. We've seen that, haven't we?
I would agree with that statement.
Some do, but many don't. And some of them have listened to the marketing pitch so much that they think it's the thing that they buy in a box somewhere.
But they don't have any confusion about what it is that they would need.
Oh yeah, that's a different thing. The need, the use.
Right.
Yeah, I need to be able to do this, this, and that. So then that's why it goes back to the use case. If you describe what outcome you want,
Right.
then yes. But if you say, well, I want to buy this thing, or I want to buy the box, or where do I get it? Or some owners, they start describing the digital twin and it becomes in this monster document that they don't even understand, and then they want to buy it.
I think the word confusion probably comes in because when you see a picture like this, or any of the different silos or the different master formats, most people usually gravitate to one or two or small part of the
Mhm.
spread, as it were, right? And everything else, for a lot of people, looks confusing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it's the same for everybody else, except that their point of confusion or their point of non-confusion is different to yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that's really what it is that when you start to bring all of these things together, there is actually no single person that understands everything
Yeah.
necessarily.
And it's confusing to think that you need all, the more you have, the better. It's like going to a buffet and eating everything at the table and then keeling over and dying. But you want to get back to the use case.
Yeah, and the lead up to this call, we had some discussion of this, and one of the confusing points is actually that people have been doing simulation, emulation, modeling of systems for years. And the question is when you actually look at the definition of what a digital twin is, how does that differ from a lot of the work that's gone over the years? So anyone that's doing fault detection, anyone that's doing AI, rules-based analysis, some kind of twin exists somewhere for that process and has for many years. And I think the confusion aligns with, what is the definition of a digital twin today? And how does this taxonomy align with what's come before?
In many ways, what's come before are sort of components of this picture, right? You mentioned simulation, there's simulation, right? So what this is trying to do is trying to aggregate all of the different things that people are trying to do with digital twin or whatever term they want.
Right, but people had either one or many
Right.
of these put together as standalone solutions before, and didn't necessarily have the digital twin moniker on them. So I think that's just where the issue comes up.
So isn't that then that way, that let's say the old way of digital twin that you're referring to, which is just DDC systems and all those kind of things, they are inherently non-composable. And what we're talking about, or we're aspiring to, is a digital twin technology where it is composable. Is that the difference here?
I think it may be, but I think that some of the technologies that came before were composable. Question is who defines what the composability is? Does that make sense?
Yeah, is it maybe a magnitude thing that maybe in the old days you can compose very specific things with each other very easily, but it's really, really difficult to do other composing?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I would also say that you know, in order to have this composability, you need to have some degree of standardization, whether it's deep or shallow or loosely connected. And, you know, the old way of solving a problem like this would be to have endless groups working on how the use cases would come out for how the information's used. But I think we all understand now that a shallower coupling, something like the connection profile methodology or other, is a better way, because we don't actually need to go that deep. And by going deep, it often ruins the value proposition or raises the cost so much that the value is not attainable.
Also, if you go too deep, you stand, there's a likelihood that you'll get confused, because what needs to be very deep is things within that particular silo to do whatever it is that it does. And the sort of things that we're talking about going cross silo typically does not need to be deep type information.
Right.
So it makes it hard even for the silo activities to happen if you don't know the difference between integrating within the silo and integrating across silos.
Right. And for any value proposition, you may have different levels of depth you need to get into, right? I want to check to see if a room is occupied. You know, is there a sensor that tells me that? Can one system pick up on another? A scheduling system talk to the monitoring system? It all depends on the value propositions at hand. And the key thing is we don't want to create an ecosystem where you have to understand everything you possibly can about an occupancy sensor when all you want to know is whether someone's in the room or not.
Information hiding, object oriented.
Looking at the chat there.
Yeah, and maybe to go off of what you just said, Jim, on the occupancy sensor, there's that specific use case of is somebody in the room or not, but somebody else might come along with a new use case that relates to the occupancy sensor, but it's for a different purpose, but it's the same occupancy sensor. In other words, you start going horizontal to other use cases, but you don't need to understand all 100 use cases that the occupancy sensor can do.
No, it's just a property. I mean, it's a property. You or a method, either one. So I mean,
Keith, you got a mic on.
But
Yeah,
it's a property to use a piece of data, not necessarily for the purpose of why that piece of data was created in the first place. I think I got that right.
Right. I think it's, you know.
yeah.
But I think the composability story is about how do you, and it's not actually an easy problem to solve. It's how do you build the ability to exchange data on a superficial level without having to be an expert in each one of these buckets in the silo.
I think that's the key, and maybe that's the thing that sort of is the counter to the complexity, because the complexity is the stuff that we don't know, and therefore if we don't need to know everything, but just know the way to service or to satisfy a use case, then you're good.
Right.
Okay, other thoughts? No, Anna is here.
Oh, I want Anno to go first then.
I think you got your mic unmuted, so you're next.
Oh, Anno, come on, you should go first.
Sorry, what's the question? I just joined. Sorry, I was running trillion things.
Just start talking. We'll see if you're right or wrong.
Digital twins.
Good start.
Twins, and we're talking about composability, and we're talking about the perceived complexity that some people talk about. And the sort of the idea here is that maybe the complexity is because you only know a little bit of it, and the whole thing looks really complex. But when you break it down to use cases, then it shouldn't be that way because it's very specific. What's your opinion?
Yeah, okay. I agree 100% with that, right? The challenge with the digital twin is it's a term that just gets thrown out there to cover all sorts of sins and all sorts of things. And what was the guy from Microsoft who called it? The elastic user or the elastic use case, right? It's stretched over whatever you wanted it to be at the time, and that I think that's a big part of the problem, right? Is that it's used for such a wide gambit of stuff that confuses folks but when you do break it down to the use cases, yeah, I think that helps people, right? Helps people focus in on, yeah, I don't care about all this other stuff. I care about this piece, of it. How does that relate to me? Type of deal. And that's
And
the
that-
next.
And that would typically come from a user or a use case in the operations of it. So it's tied to something that actually needs to be done.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it has to deliver some value result at the end of the day, right? What is the benefit that is, which is the other problem that I have with the digital twin large view. The benefits are high level, 50,000, wouldn't it be great if, type of stuff without any substance a lot of times until you start to drill down.
All right, David. That button over
Sorry,
there.
I
There you go.
couldn't see my cursor in the sun here sitting outside. What's interesting is I think that when we're creating integrated buildings that have integrated systems to support the operational model of the tenant organization. So let's say Kaiser Permanente with the operating room process, and you have pre-op, op, in the theater, post-op, and you have a calendar and a schedule and phases of the procedure. And there is an opportunity to do a very high level of systems integration, but with the systems themselves with data exchange. But also there's a part of the procedures where the humans need to add data and say, hey, we're moving from phase 1 to phase 2 or step 1 to step 2 of this procedure, or we're wrapped up and we're moving to post-op and recovery. And this is where you have this symbiosis of people interacting with a workflow that includes building systems. And to me, this is the highest level of art we can get to, is when you have the people doing what they do in the building, integrating with the building systems, but also the operational and workflow software like Epic software for healthcare. And what's interesting is that this is not just the caregivers interacting, but now it's the patients themselves interacting too, because there's a feedback loop with them as well. And there can be systems in their recovery room or patient room with alarms or, nurse calls and things. And so this is where the level of integration can be truly transformative for the human experience in the built environment. And then at the same time, by having this very integrated workflow, you're now creating very, very valuable data all along the way to constantly improve, hone, and optimize the workflow as well. And so this data that is created along the way can certainly be mined for future optimization, but also it can be used to find problems and actually areas for improvement, which is another way of saying optimization, I guess, as well. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is there is a certain aspect to it, which is building systems and the traditional stuff that's spec'd by folks. But then there's also the operational systems that are not at all part of the normal design and construction system specifications. And so this is where we have a really interesting interaction where you absolutely need the operations, real estate, design, and construction team interacting with the operations team and the IT team and all of these other parties. And with this type of super challenging integration environment, as an example, you really need, or one needs to understand what is the data that each person needs and what is needed from other people. And it really actually creates the matrix for the data exchange that needs to happen just by looking at what everybody needs to do their job. And the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is that there's part of this that's in a design specification to build or improve the facility. There's part of this that's software and on the IT side, which is typically nothing to do with the design and construction world. And then there's another aspect to this too, which is systems that are not in the realm of design and construction. And what from doing this and doing this exact type of challenging environment, what I've found works as the best place to start is what is the operations model and who are all of the players in the operations model and what is that operational workflow, and having that be the basis for, in essence, the rubric that you follow to fill in all of this detail that's required, but also to explore interactions where you can do transformative things. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that we need to look at the operations model and the human experience in the built environment, and not just focus on the operations team and the ownership team, but the tenant team, and then how all of that interacts together.
I think what you're saying is, don't forget that we need to also compose the humans into all of this.
It's yeah, but it's not just the, I think we on this call tend to focus on design, construction, and operations folks, and not the doctors and the nurses per se,
Right.
or not on the guests at the hotel or the patients at the hospital, etc. And that digital twin and that data exchange is actually the most live data that's available typically. I would love to hear Anno, yeah, please.
Sorry, I actually, that's really, really relevant and something that we focus a lot on, right? We, back to the users, we have a whole spectrum of users, but to your point, we often lose sight of the actual occupant themselves, right? The person in the building who's got, and it's almost as if we treat them like they're an annoying add-on to the building, right? We're sorry, I'm looking after the building over here. Please be quiet. Stop annoying me. And it's something I keep circling back to, especially in the sectors. And we break our like any large company, we break it into the different sectors, which actually helps us at the end of the day, because then you can focus in on what you need for a school education university is different to a hospital, right? There's different things that the occupants need and want to do and all that sort of stuff. But you're right, David. It's funny how we quickly always forget about why is the building here in the first place.
One thing we started talking about relating to this actually Anto, is it okay if I jump in?
Please.
Yeah, what I found interesting in last week's conversation kind of ties into this. Was it you, Anno? I think you said the dam principle. But the definition digital twin and like David, you said it goes beyond design, construction, and operation, which is interesting because we design for patients and we design. So having access to that would be great, would be very interesting. And the owners that have this information, they typically don't know how to ask for it. And they might not even like to call it digital twin. I've run into that before too. We don't care what it's called. If we think from the dam perspective, we just want to get to the data. If you can get to the data, I don't care if you call it a digital twin or BIM or database or SQL, it doesn't really matter. In fact, Keith even calls it a Siamese twin, right? So it's whatever we can get to it, then let's do it. And let's not worry about what it's called. But if we can coalesce around digital twin, then we can kind of use the definitions that are out there. But I've found as an industry, we need to be flexible enough to tell the story to whoever is asking us to build that solution and calling it whatever they want. And we've had quite a few owners where we couldn't even utter the word digital twin because they had an aversion to it until they decided it was okay. And then we said, yeah, that's what it is. We've been doing this all along. And I think several of you last week even said, isn't this what we've been doing for quite a long time? And coming from the BIM world, and I know Mark knows this as well too, because we worked on the NIBS BIM and Digital Twin Committee. The BIM world thinks, okay, we're coming with our BIM, and as soon as we connect it to sensors and building automation systems, and boom, we have a digital twin, which is partially true, right? But that's one angle and one perspective again. So I think what was the DAM? I forgot the acronym now.
Data access model, right?
Data access model. There we go. That's all we need. As long as we can get to the data. If it's in your head or in the PDF, then it's not as valuable. But if we can get to it, then yeah, we can start using it.
If we can get to
Especially
it, then it's
considering
modeled.
Exactly. And especially considering today's tools and things, we can convert from one to the other relatively quickly and easily, right? I
Right.
mean, that's what's changed dramatically too. It's easy to change.
Yeah.
Give me data, even if it's terrible data, I can still work with it.
Yeah. Keith does that all the time. I know you get to the
Yeah.
data and you do stuff with it.
Keith's brilliant at it.
Well, it's we keep having to try to back into what we really want in the first place with everything. I mean, even ontologies, standards. What we're looking for, I think the holy grail of the industry is like, wow, what if we could build this digital twin in construction at the very beginning of the concept of the building through its construction and commissioning, and then, wow, now I've got the data because it's in the digital twin. And it was really all we wanted in the first place. Like, seriously, it's like that we're like backing into the ask and the standards. We talk about standards all the time. Yeah, it goes without saying that if you have a data standard, you got to get the data in order to do that. So I feel like we're kind of having almost this kind of dishonest conversation in this industry about what we're really after. It's the freaking data. Like, that's what we're really after.
Don't spend
That's
20 years
interesting.
building a perfect standard if you don't use it.
Right. I was just going to go the same path, Kuan. It's like we that's an interesting perspective. And yeah, I mean, I don't care anymore what the protocol standard is. Stop worrying about it. Just give me the damn data. I'm going to use that. It's my new internal name.
Yeah, I like it.
So Tracy, you work with buildings where there are a lot of occupants. I mean, it's a consumer-centric operations. Do you ever, when you talk to your clients about their buildings, do you ever talk about the people, about the human side of it, and what happens there?
Well, yeah. It's interesting because it's a lot of people, but not all at the same time, right? Because it's all smaller footprint kind of stuff. The occupancy experience is important, and depending on which segment, I'm typically in restaurants and retail, right? And so there's two real occupants. There's the people who work for the company that owns the building and run it, and then there are the customers. So, and both of those are important. The customer experience and what goes on there is, you know, first and foremost, but now even through regulation, like in the state of California with their added OSHA rules, monitoring indoor air temperature is now required by law. Because if it exceeds a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, they're an OSHA violation and subject to fines, right? So it is very much an important part of the discussion and part of our sales pitch, certainly, is keeping the space comfortable while being efficient, right? The tricky part is we don't typically talk about that in terms of digital twins or anything like that, you know, because people in that space come at that from a much more traditional, you know, customer experience viewpoint than from a digital first kind of a thought. So not a lot of discussion in terms of, you know, what would digital twins or it's just other than can you keep the temperature right? That's the other thing they're really concerned about, right?
Well, and it's just not that sophisticated, right?
Yeah.
You know, Tracy, I mean, it's literally could be an analog $40 thermostat from Home Depot controlling that stuff. So there is no digital.
Very often. Yeah.
So there is no digital in it. It's analog. It could be
Yeah.
pneumatic. Who cares? I just want to be comfortable.
Yeah. That's where they start the conversation. And then, you know, when we come in and add some intelligence to everything and we're watching data and providing feedback, and it's an interesting I won't call it an evolution in their thinking. It's an awakening in their thinking, you know, that they actually have access to data and they can see what's going on and they can look back historically and, you know, somebody's complaining that it's always cold at night or it's always hot in the kitchen. They can go back and actually look at that data and talk about that issue intelligently, right? Make decisions based on that. So let alone getting into the maintenance and operation of the RTUs or refrigeration units or anything like that. That's a whole other discussion. But
So when a small building owner or operator, somebody that has one, like installs a thermostat, a digital thermostat to do whatever, it's just a simple thing. Maybe he got it from Home Depot. Would we not, is that not in a way same as the digital twins of the past that we're talking about?
I think, you know, especially when you're talking about composable digital twins, that's the only way to go into that space, right? You have to make this very repeatable, very scalable, very cost effective. And the good news is so many of those building systems are very similar, right? It's RTUs, you don't have nearly the snowflake problem that you do with commercial buildings. So everything becomes much more repeatable. All right, this one's got 3 units, that one's got 5 units, that one's got 2 units, but that part's easy because it's just stamp and repeat at that point. I think the approach from a quote unquote digital twin standpoint is it's all part of a blended, smarter building approach to that space. Same way that Keith and I would approach from an AI standpoint. You know, 2 years ago, we'd have the conversation about, I need proof. And it's, you know, we got to show with and without AI and so forth. And now I've come to the conclusion, we don't need to do that anymore. People just expect AI to be part of the solution and it adds to the capabilities of the platform. And I think a really strong composable digital twin is just an extension beyond that point at this point. So,
you know, Tracy, that's extremely insightful. Like we literally just got a new small restaurant customer, and almost it was behind closed doors. It's like I don't even care if it works. I just want to say that we have AI enabled comfort at my restaurant. Like they don't even care.
So how do we move digital twins into that space where it's just expected now? You know, we're getting to the point, especially in our space, where anyone who's going to build a new building, I don't think there's, you know, going to be a question if they're putting any kind of controls into this building, they'll expect it to be smart. Well, what does smart mean now? You know, we have been talking in this show for the last few years, smart means AI. Well, does smart mean a little bit more than that now? You know, does that include a digital twin component of some kind?
I'd
Or
like to-
have we already been delivering that potentially?
Sorry. I'd like to add another little twist to this is the other thing we're seeing now is a strong natural language evolution that we really don't want to deal with all this stuff. We just simply want to talk to it. And where AI has made that all available. And I expect that to be part of my twin. And I expect that to be part of my DAM data as well. And as we start to pull those pieces together, I think the lines actually do blur. And maybe we can get away from this annoying twin reference in the fact
It's an
just
interesting,
simply-
really interesting point, Ken. And I've had similar discussions and things here on this side. We're looking at doing a lot of NLP stuff, which then begets the question of the whole, do I need the visualization piece in front of me, right? As opposed to, I'll ask the question and then you show me the piece that I'm talking about, right? It still has a representation and it still has data and everything else, but do I need to look at this big beast first, as opposed to just I have this question, show me the stuff that's relevant, that's just to that question right now.
That's just sort of a different way of navigating. Ultimately.
It is, but I think it underscores Ken's point about does it simplify the beast in the result, right?
Do the customers care, right?
Right.
If you think about if the customer is the owner, if you think about that customer experience, ideally they just want one blended, vertically integrated solution. They don't care if 5 of the components came from here and 2 came from there, and there are 4 layers of software on this. As long as it works and it accomplishes their outcomes, and when they get in, they can just I just want to look at the temperature in the kitchen. I don't need to drill in and drill in and drill in and, you know, have this fancy thing. So there'll be another point in time where maybe they need that other data. But I think the approach, once you get, especially when you jump out of the space where there are facilities teams behind a building and there are not facilities teams behind the building, the mentality changes completely, right? They just need it to be simple and be there and be quiet and be work. And when I have a question for it, like Ken said, I'd like to be able to type it in and get an answer and not have to think about it.
Just in that
Or
context.
navigate a real big complex system to find this stupid little question that I'm asking.
Yep.
Right.
But the
What's
structure
the
in the
average
background,
temperature in the kitchen for the last 6 months?
yeah. But the data in the background is open. The DAM data is open.
Still has
therefore
to be
it can
damn
get to
data.
Yep. We
That's
have to do all the things we've been talking about here for months and years to make all that vision happen, for sure. But
I think the words are DAM and open. If it's open, then you can get to it. And you don't care where it comes from as long as it's open.
The thing
But
is,
it's damn
it's
open.
it's not there. I mean, I would challenge anybody to try and do an AI query or a digital twin of my Amazon thermostat right now. Impossible.
yeah,
How about my washer that is freaking doing weird stuff? It's Wi-Fi enabled. Clearly, it's a smart clothes washer, washing machine. Nope.
but
Can't get it.
how long before we can get there, right? And this goes back to something that I claimed a year ago. It's the, you know, I don't know and I don't care. I just
Well,
want my information. Right?
That's where setting this
I
up,
would,
setting composability as a model for digital twins starts to point out the stuff that's not damn available. And that's why I like the composability part, is because put that chart back up. No, don't, just kidding. You can't get the data to fill in probably 95% of that chart for most buildings. It's just not damn available. So we talk about the confusion around the digital twin. That my point is, people aren't really confused about wanting to be able to make digital decisions. And you guys all just said it. Everybody wants the data to be able to make digital decisions. They don't have access to the data. It's just it, and
You're right.
we keep talking about it as if that's the easy part, and it's like, well, that's the part that just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
can I extend your thought a little bit just quickly, Rick, on the home thing, and just because I've been
Yeah.
involved with a lot just recently, some weird stuff. But so the weird part about the home model, which we probably need to take lessons from, they've gone way over to the other side of the dark side. Not only can you put all sorts of stuff with all sorts of protocols and threads and matters and Amazons, I've got 4 different systems I can now choose from that sort of kind of all work. So now everybody's realized I can get out of the data, but now I'm like, I have to make a choice now. I mean, I can't even imagine asking my wife, okay, you have to choose between Google and Amazon and Alexa and Apple. It's just like, no.
Because so you can't orchestrate or you can't compose between the different vendors, which that's
But they've
just,
gone, and that's my point, they've gone way over the other side. If all this data is available, look what happens over that end of the world, right? So
but I would still say that for home or for commercial, the data is actually not exportable and or two-way to be able to do
Yeah.
composable solutions. It is still like, and I'm not kidding. That's an Amazon thermostat right over there. I can see it from here. And you
hey, Alexa, tell me Rick's temperature.
Shh.
All right, we need to wrap this. It's past the top of the hour. This has been a great conversation. I think this is going to be a great month of conversation. We look forward to continuing this composing digital twins next week. So let's wrap here. Hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
That's all I have.